India remains one of the last major economies still buying large volumes of Russian oil, and it shows no sign of stopping. Despite growing Western condemnation and now newly announced US tariffs, New Delhi continues to prioritize its energy needs over political alignment. Critics say it's not about defiance, it's about necessity. On July 30th, US President Donald Trump imposed a 25% tariff on all Indian goods, calling it a penalty for what he described as India's overwhelming dependence on Russian military gear and energy. Trump didn't hold back. He said US had a massive trade deficit with India when imported goods outstripped exports and linked its vast purchases of military equipment and energy from Russia. He further added, India will therefore be paying a tariff of 25% plus a penalty. So, will India yield to US pressure? Short answer, no. At least not anytime soon. Indian officials have consistently stated that no directive has been issued to oil refineries to stop purchasing Russian crude. In fact, both state-run and private sector companies are allowed to make their own decisions based on what's available and affordable. For India, this isn't about politics, it's about survival. India imports a staggering 88% of its crude oil, a figure that underlines just how critical energy imports are to the country's economy. With over 1.4 billion people, a rapidly growing middle class, and surging demand for transport and industrial fuels, India cannot afford to chase expensive oil in volatile global market. Russia's oil, discounted and available in large volumes, has become an economic lifeline. When Western nations began sanctioning Russian energy after the Ukraine invasion in 2022, Moscow started offering deep discounts, reportedly as much as $25 to $30 less per barrel than Gulf suppliers. For India, that translated into billions saved. Those savings help keep domestic fuel prices stable, control inflation, and protect foreign exchange reserves. In essence, Russian oil helps keep the lights on, the factories running, and the economy growing. Western nations, particularly the US and European Union, imposed a price cap of $60 per barrel on Russian crude, aiming to limit Moscow's revenue without removing its oil from the global market. India has stayed within this cap, buying oil legally and transparently. Importantly, Russian crude is not banned under international law, and Indian refiners are not violating any binding sanctions. In other words, New Delhi is following the rules. India's approach underscores what officials call strategic energy security. The government does not micromanage oil procurement, instead, letting refiners make commercial choices. The autonomy means that if Russian oil is cheaper, easier to ship, and readily available, Indian refiners will buy it. And behind the economics lies geopolitical balancing. India maintains long-standing ties with Russia, from deterrence to diplomacy, and doesn't want to be pulled entirely into either the Western or Eastern camp. Switching away from Russian crude would likely mean turning to costlier Gulf or US supplies, and in a global market already jittery about supply cuts and Middle East tensions, prices could rise even further. That means higher petrol prices at the pump in India, a ballooning import bill, and possible ripple effects on the Indian rupee. So what happens next? Now the US tariffs are meant to hurt, but they may not yield the results Washington expects. Analysts believe India will try to negotiate, not retreat. One likely scenario? Quiet diplomacy behind the scenes, seeking waivers, phased transitions, or alternative trade incentives. But unless Western sanctions evolve into direct penalties for Russian oil buyers, not just tariffs on unrelated goods, India's position is unlikely to shift. India's energy choices are grounded in cold economic math, not moral posturing. In a world where fuel security is inseparable from food security, inflation control, and industrial productivity, energy pragmatism is national interest. As the world polarizes over Ukraine, New Delhi walks a tightrope, engaging with the West, partnering with the East, and choosing autonomy over alignment. For now, the oil will keep flowing, and India, as always, will chart its own course. Bureau Report, India Today Global.